Hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. This is session 12 of MOOC 13, the last session of this MOOC. We're going to talk about convergence today. And I think this is actually a very interesting topic. It's the first time we've added it to the MOOC. Before we do that, though, I need to do a little bit of course logistics. Polemitis has made me promise that I will do course logistics before we start. And for those who are interested, as you can see, I am continuing my exhibition of UNIC branded gear. So let's start with the course logistics now. It's interesting. Dimitri, it says on the chat that some people haven't been able to join yet. Can you confirm? Let me wait a minute or two. Let's get a confirmation that they're in, because the course logistics are super important. So I don't want anyone to miss them. Okay, super. Looks like we're live on the MOOC page as well. All right. Let's talk about the final examination. So this is the last live session. We then have a 10-day revision period from, well, more than 10 days, from tomorrow in effect through April 23rd. And that revision period is both to cover the holidays for those who are celebrating this Easter this week and next week, Orthodox Easter. So for those who are celebrating, I hope you have a very happy, healthy Easter with your families. And then we'll also be doing a course survey during this period that Dimitris will be sending out. And so we look forward to your ideas and feedback. The final exam will be during a 3-day period, April 24th, 25th, 26th. You can take the final exam at any time during this period, but it has to be within this period. So please do not miss this period. There's not going to be any exceptions if you miss this period. And the exam is timed. There's a 2-hour limit, and we think it's plenty of time to manage the exam, submit your answers. It is 50 multiple choice style questions. They're in a similar format to the weekly quizzes. And each question, you can get 2 points for a total of 100 points. And so your maximum score on the exam is 100 points. You have 1 attempt to take the exam. You can't redo it. So please try to do it during that period. Clear out your friends and family from your space, concentrate, put on your headphones, and try and do a good job on the exam. The questions are of 2 styles of multiple choice. So one style is you can pick only 1 correct answer. So you can only pick 1 of the multiple choice answers. And in which case, you don't lose any points if you pick the wrong answer. So if you're unsure of the right answer between 2 different answers, you should take your best guess. The second type are a select all that applies type question. And so in these questions, there might be 1, 2, 3, or even 4 correct choices. And so here, you should only select the choices that you're pretty sure are right, because every additional choice you make, you'll lose a fraction of a point by making that choice. The the grade that you need to get your certificate of accomplishment is a 60%. So of the 50 questions, you have to get 30 right. Generally, people who have been following the course and have been putting some type of attention should be able to pass the final examination. And this final examination will be your whole grade for the course. So the weekly quizzes don't count. And so if you get your 60 out of 100, your 30 questions correctly, you'll get your certificate of accomplishment from the University of Nicosia, and these certificates will be issued, as always, in a digitally verifiable format on the Bitcoin blockchain. So you'll receive an electronic PDF that can be verified in an open source manner on the Bitcoin blockchain. And it's interesting, we were the first to do this in 2014. A handful of other universities have started doing it in the next 6 years, but we're still like, there's only a small handful that have figured this out. So it's interesting to see how technologies diffuse. You'll still be among the very, very, I think, few that have this type of certificate. So I encourage you to try and complete the test if you can. I encourage people I see a lot of people who have put them on their LinkedIn, and we have heard of cases of people who have used them actually to get a job. There's a well-known firm in the crypto space that was searching LinkedIn, and looking for people who have the certificate noted on their LinkedIn, and using that as a screening mechanism to reach out to them for job offers, which I thought was really very, very interesting. And so if you can manage to make that happen, you really should try and do it, I believe. The other thing, it does count for those who will later do the MSc. It will count as transfer credit or credit towards the MSc. So if you are planning on following the full master's program, you will need to pass the MOOC at some point. So better to pass it now than later. And we have offered, and will offer this time as well, 25% scholarships to the MSc for the top 30 scores on the MOOC final examination. So if you are thinking of participating in the MSc, then it's an extra important opportunity to try and get a high score on the exam. I noticed a couple of questions as I was saying this. One very correct error, it is also Passover these next few days, so I extend my comments to those celebrating Passover as well. And someone mentioned about a power cut, and look, if your power does get cut in the middle of the examination, do get in touch with Dimitri right away somehow, and we'll see how we can handle. I don't think we've had that scenario happen yet, so hopefully it doesn't happen. There's no obvious easy solution to that, so hopefully that won't happen during the examination. So these are the course logistics. I'd like to take again a couple of minutes to discuss the MSc, and because I think it fits nicely here. The program is by a wide margin the most popular, and first, but also most popular academic program in this field. Several hundred students have enrolled since inception, and they've enrolled from a variety of industries. One of the things that I think is important to understand is there's no particular profile that is the right profile to enroll in the MSc. We've had entrepreneurs, developers, we've had doctors, lawyers, accountants, business people, management consultants, central bankers, almost every field has had folks that have enrolled in the MSc. And the reason is this is a horizontal technology, right? It's a foundational technology. And so part of the theory, I think, for a lot of people is this is something that is going to help them in their career. And given that it's going to help them in their career, whatever their field is, it gives you a competitive advantage in whatever field that you're in. And so this is like being the person in your firm in the mid-90s. That's the person who got up to speed on the internet. Eventually, so if you think about kind of what people do with a degree in three buckets. One bucket is people are in an industry, a traditional industry or a traditional firm, and they become the go-to person at their firm for blockchain, crypto, DLT type topics. And since it's a new area and a developing area, the person who has that knowledge tends to accelerate. So that's one bucket. Second bucket are people who want to change industries. They're not satisfied in the industry that they're in. They use this as a wedge to switch industries. Third bucket is people who want to get directly into the crypto industry, whether that means working at an exchange or a miner or at a consulting division of a big firm like an Accenture or a PwC that is doing a lot of blockchain consulting. It's obviously a great career booster in that case. And then the fourth bucket is more experienced, more business experienced people who want to do something entrepreneurial or want to launch a business or are general managers of a business and want to see how they can implement this in their business. We've had all four buckets. We've had all types of very interesting outcomes from people doing important things in the crypto space. And the funniest story of all remains that one of our graduates, a week after he graduated in Nicosia, was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal because he was one of the co-founders of the DAO, which was one of those very special moments in the development of Ethereum where it was the first attempt at a decentralized autonomous organization, and it failed, it got hacked, and then they rolled back Ethereum to rescue it. And I had seen him at graduation in Cyprus, and shook his hand and congratulated him, and a week later he's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. He's like 26 years old or something. So it's amazing, right? Like this is, these things do in fact happen. The other thing that I think is important to note, LinkedIn had one of their employer surveys a couple months ago, and the number one most in-demand skill by employers is blockchain. Right? Number one. I would be thrilled if it's in the top 25. I'd be happy if it's in the top 10. It's literally number one. So I do believe for those who have the time, energy, and capacity to attend this program, it, for most folks, has been both intellectually interesting, both something that helps their personal development, but also has been a good professional development experience. One other thing to note, we're in the middle of a full revamp of the program. And so we hope, coronavirus permitting, we will go through a reaccreditation of the program this summer where we have updated the course structure, updated the modules, updated the syllabi, updated what we're teaching, and by the fall we're going to completely redo the MOOC as well. And so if it's of interest, you might consider redoing the MOOC in the fall. I think it's going to be quite different than this time. So it was Marinos Themistokleos, the Associate Dean of the Business School and the academic coordinator for the program, and Dimitris and some of the other faculty have been working very hard to do a full grounds-up refresh of the whole program. And next in line is the MOOC, and we think we'll have some pretty exciting stuff coming for the fall. And so we're looking forward to that. And you'll see in the last couple of slides of today's presentation, Marinos has slipped in some slides about the MSc, and I think they're really quite interesting what the new course pathway looks like. And so take a moment to look at them. And just know we have a large team of knowledgeable folks, both Dimitris and then some of the other folks in admissions, who would be happy, who specialize on blockchain, that's all they talk about all day, would be happy to work with you if this is something that is of interest, help you with the admission process, help you think through if this is the right program for you, and so on. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please do get in touch. I think with that, I will get into today's topic. There are some questions which I will... Oh, sorry, let me answer this question, which has to do with the MSc. Someone says, I can't help but notice how difficult it is for someone to be professionally or academically involved in the decentralized space, given to its early stage that promotes highly involved insiders. Does the University of Nicosia offer ways for new researchers and entrepreneurs to get past this initial hurdle and be actively involved? Does the University of Nicosia actively consider recent graduates as potential hires for its research and operational needs that are crypto-related? Is there a system in place that allows for undergraduate students with MSc to get hands-on experience by researching under the sponsorship of UNIC? If not, what would you suggest is highly engaged? Let me answer the easy ones. We absolutely consider recent graduates from the MSc. Dimitris is one of them. So we do hire from the MSc. We have multiple folks at IFF that went through the MSc. So that's bucket one. We'd love students to come help us with research. We have a huge pile of research projects and research ideas we'd like to get to, and not enough hours in the day. So anyone who has interest and can roll up their sleeves and help, we'd love to find a way for that to happen. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space. I think what you have to do is be willing, depending on where you live, to be willing to reach out remotely, right? There's a lot of firms in the space. There's a lot of people looking for staff in the space, and it's an industry that is remote work friendly to begin with. And in the world of coronavirus, remote work is even more accepted. So we have also had the reverse happen. We have had folks who have worked at IFF. I think of someone in particular who was a graduate of the program, worked for us for a couple of years, and then got a job, getting a very attractive compensation package from a firm in the space. And during that whole time, he was actually in Cyprus the whole time. So he was a student online in Cyprus, and then he worked with us here in Nicosia, and now he's working remotely for a company based abroad, and has gone through the whole cycle from student to University of Nicosia, employed to now employed at a crypto firm. And that all happened fairly naturally, and we're very proud of him. And this is a great pathway for certain people. So we are very much in favor of all these things. And I think, I can't promise anything, of course, for an individual, but I do think if someone gets very proactive and does the American style hustling, as they say, chasing down firms, you can probably pretty easily find reports of all the firms out there and chasing them around, even if you're not part of the University of Nicosia, and reaching out to them. I think you can get in front of people. For those who are in the program, we have a career office. We have a variety of crypto firms who do reach out to us looking for, crypto and blockchain, do reach out to us looking for people. And I think you have a decent chance of getting into the field. So that's my view on that question. Now, let me talk a little bit about the today's session. This is a new session, and I want to thank Marinos for helping me with this. He pulled together the first draft, and it's a good first draft, and I agree it's consistent with my views, and I'd like to expound on it a little bit because I think where we are is the following. I do believe the single biggest impact of this field, and in this field, I would put in cryptocurrency, blockchain, and DLT. I'm putting them as one bucket for the purpose of this discussion. Okay, so some things will end up being in cryptocurrency, some in blockchain, some in DLT. For the purpose of this very high-level discussion, we can call them the same, and we'll talk later about some nuances. I think their most important part is going to have to do, the most important role they're going to play is not on the human side, but on the machine side. It is going to have to do with how they impact machine-to-machine transactions. And the reason for this is part of the frame by which I think about new technologies, which is new technologies and new technologies of this disruptive type or radical type, as we discussed last week, are often good at, for some uses of an existing technology, but can be remarkable for things that were previously not possible. And I'd like you to think about how email works. So let's talk about email. Let's imagine it's in the early 90s, late 80s, mid 90s, and you discover email. What's the parallel? Well, it's the post office, right? It says, oh, this is going to disrupt the post office. It's going to disrupt physical mail. And that's partially true, right? The number of postcards that people send, I'm sure, is way down than it was in the early 90s. But post office and UPS and FedEx are in fact very much in operation, delivering an awful lot of packages from Amazon, and still a very important part of the physical delivery space. What email really did was less that it disrupted, packet UPS, and it created a whole different usage case, which is called email. So pre-email, maybe you in the world that you would send letters and faxes, maybe you would send a handful a day, a handful a week if you're in business. In your personal capacity, almost none. I remember when I'd go on summer holidays for the whole summer, maybe if I was really diligent, I would send one letter back to each of my friends and maybe one more postcard. And that was like some type of big accomplishment, because it's hard. You gotta write it by hand, put an envelope, go to the post office, like a stamp, etc., etc. And yeah, it's true, that doesn't happen anymore. But it hasn't happened because what we've done is that one letter a summer I used to send to the post office, now I send by email. Right? I believe I was telling someone yesterday, I have 98,000 emails in my inbox. Right? And I get several hundred every day, inbound and outbound, which if you went to someone in the 90s and told them, yeah, so in the future, you're going to be sending and receiving several hundred letters a day, they would think it is completely out of reality, right? And completely. Wouldn't seem plausible. You sit there, have your typewriter, you're a secretary, and you send like 5 letters. How could you imagine you're going to send hundreds of letters a day? So, and then of course, email is disrupted in a similar way by chats and Vibers and signal, and etc., etc., etc. The relevant question here then becomes, okay, well, maybe this will disrupt some part of human payments, and we discussed through this course what usage cases might be more plausible or less plausible. But there, on human payments, there is a discussion to be had, right? There is a discussion to be had that says this is when a credit card's a good choice, when a bank transfer is a good choice, when a blockchain-based payment is a good choice. When you come to machine-to-machine transactions, I don't think there's much discussion to be had, right? Like, if you ask yourself, I'm a drone, and I'm some type of autonomous data-generating drone, and I am sending data, I'm collecting pollution data and sending them back for sale, and I need to stop at various solar charging stations to recharge, which is not vastly out of bounds for something that's available in 2 to 3 years. How are they going to pay each other? Are you going to go to your bank and say, here is my drone, and it would like to open a credit card account, and it's going to fly around using a credit card account? Or, okay, well, no, you'll open it. And really, are they going to have credit card credentials or debit card credentials floating around in the drone, and then each solar panel is going to do a credit card transaction? Probably not, right? Like, that feels more like a crypto transaction. It feels much more plausible to have an open crypto system and say, sure, I'm going to charge for XYZ minutes, and that's going to cost me this many Satoshis or gas or whatever. It seems a more plausible way to do it. But let's get to even wilder ones. We're going to have self-driving cars, right? And that's for sure. That's coming in this decade. And then, one thing that a lot of people talk about, including by a lot of people, I mean car manufacturers, is one of the things the cars might want to do is share data. So you're going down the highway, and if one car in front of you sees that there's a pothole or something on the road, it might pass that data back to the other cars. Well, how's that going to happen? I mean, here we're talking about a non-financial usage case, right? Like, we're talking about moving huge amounts of data, vast amounts of data, in a completely non-financial format. It's not even a question of can Chase do it or can Bank of Cyprus do it, right? It's a total different data format, and logically that strikes me as some type of blockchain DLT usage case. And then, as the next step, you're in the highway and you're in your self-driving car and you're in a hurry, you have an important business meeting to go to, and you put your car in high priority mode. And what does high priority mode mean? It means it makes, I don't know, some micro payments to the cars in front of you that are on a leisurely afternoon ride, and they move out of the way and you go ahead of them and you get there 10 minutes faster to your meeting because you're in a rush. And all of these might be thousands of transactions a second where there's no chance the existing system is designed for. This is already happening on the individual company side, right? Like, when Amazon sets prices, you already have machine to human commerce. It's just the humans are underpowered in that battle, right? So when Amazon is setting prices, Amazon is not setting prices the way your retail store used to set prices 20 years ago. right? Back then, someone would say, "Oh, this is. I think this should be $3.25, and it's probably going to stay $3.25 for a while." Amazon has millions of products, and it's changing its prices millions of times a day based on inventory levels, sales levels, search engine marketing data, your own data, how other people are pricing, and you're going in as a relatively unarmed consumer facing an AI in effect. Well, this could work in reverse once you had non-human signed payments, right? Let's say I like the jeans I'm wearing, and I know the brand, and I know my size, and I know the color and the weave and all these things that jeans have, and I know that on occasion they go on sale, and on occasion they're $70, not $110. But also, I'm busy. have my life to live, and eventually, what's going to happen is I'll buy them at $100 because I'll run out of jeans and I'll need a new pair, and whatever price they are then is the price I'm going to buy them. But why couldn't I have a bot that not only is constantly searching the sites for the right jeans at the right price, but can actually execute the transaction when it's available and get it done, right? So there, once that happens, you have machine-to-machine transactions on both sides. And there'll be a lot more machine-to-machine commerce, not just for goods we're used to buying and selling, but from goods that are today too small, too low value, too fast moving to be bought and sold. Imagine a world, let's take IoT, right, Internet of Things. Imagine a world that is covered in sensors. And in particular, imagine a world that is covered in pollution sensors. One of the things that you may or may not have noticed, there's almost a tidal wave of new academic research that is coming out and saying the day-to-day pollution levels of normal Western cities is actually quite harmful to human health. And this is a big deal, right? Because obviously everyone says, well, yeah, sure, New Delhi has very high airborne pollution, and of course it reduces people's longevity and quality of life and all these things, and everyone says, well, yeah, obviously, I knew that. And people also know that in Victorian England, in Charles Dickens movies, when London is covered in industrial fog, turns out that it was also very bad for you. And there was I'd say 5 or 10 years ago, a belief that we've solved that problem in, let's say, the developed world, that a city like Rome or Madrid or Cincinnati or Indianapolis or San Francisco has an acceptable level of air pollution. It's safe now. Well, now as they're doing more detailed studies, it turns out that's not true at all. That the level of pollution in a typical Western city, I think what we're going to discover, probably has health impacts in the range broadly of secondhand smoking. And I don't want to over-index on this topic, it's just an example. Well, if that's the case, how do you reduce it, right? Because it's someone driving here, it's someone's car being a little bit more, having a few more emissions, it's a factory, it's that, the other, and it's at a micro level. It's not at a gross level, it's at a micro level. There might be a neighborhood that on a certain day, based on the wind, this, that, the other, the particulate level has gone up. Well, again, you could imagine a world where that is censored up. Sensors to see air pollution are cheap now. You could imagine a city that is doing it at very granular scale. They have one every 50 feet. You're tracking the pollution level everywhere constantly. You have targets. and you go for some type of credit payment scheme. And if your car is coming through there and you're raising the pollution more than you should, I don't know, you'll get dinged 50 cents or something, right? It's not like you're going to go directly to jail or anything. You'll have to make a certain payment, and it'll use that to drive incentives and reduce pollution. All of this activity, to me, doesn't fit particularly well with the existing financial system. The existing financial system is well designed for human speed transactions on the whole. Right? And the existing financial system has a very weird permissioning system. What's the private key at the end of the day in the existing financial system? And once you've gone a little bit into crypto, you think about this and it's like, it seems completely ridiculous. And you're going to say the ultimate private key, someone's going to tell me it's your account password. I'm like, no, it's not actually that. If you want to do something in the existing financial system as an individual or as a company, the ultimate beginning of the process is a human signature. There is nothing you can do without a human signature. You want to open a bank account, you have to have a human signature. You want to open a corporate bank account, you need to bring a resolution from the board of directors that is signed by the secretary or the board members that says XYZ entity wants to open a bank account. Which is a really wild system because a signature is not a particularly secure system. And the whole system as it is today is predicated on the people in the system are individuals. The entities that are transaction ultimately are individuals. Even when it's companies, it's individuals. The person who is authorizing the company to do it is an individual. A company, the abstract entity, never goes to the bank to open a bank account. It's the CEO, the CFO, the board of directors. Ultimately, some individual is putting their signature to get things started. Well, as you go to a world where you might have thousands, then tens of thousands, then millions, and tens of millions, then billions, and tens of billions, and maybe hundreds of billions of machines that somehow need to interact to exchange data voluntarily, or sell services to each other, or sell data to each other, or make decisions based on data, or transact based on data. My meta hypothesis on this whole field is that the economic substrate for the machines is going to be crypto DLT blockchain based. And so that to me is where these technologies will fully blossom, because there it plays tremendously to their strengths. It plays tremendously to their strengths that they are granular, that they are programmable, and that they are permissionless. Again, some of the users will be permissioned, but some of them will be permissionless. And those, there you get out of the discussion of, well, is it better to use an Amex to buy your coffee? It might be, right? It's not going to be better to use your Amex to exchange pothole data among hundreds of cars going down the highway. Like, that's impossible that it's going to run on the Amex payment rails, right? They absolutely were not designed for that. And so how do we then bring this in with this concept of the fourth industrial revolution? And so let me park for a second the singularity stuff, because that stuff's super fun and interesting to talk about, but it's also very controversial. And I think we're going to have a tremendous amount of societal change, whether or not that happens. All right, here are for me the major components that are coming. One is blockchain, we've discussed. Okay. The second is good narrow AI. So what do I mean by good narrow AI? All the singularity stuff is AGI type stuff, artificial general intelligence. It's an Antonis, but smarter, faster, self-learning, getting better every day. And if today the Antonis AI is half as good as Antonis, tomorrow it'll be as good as Antonis, and in like a month, it'll be so much better than Antonis that it will be like the difference between Antonis and an ant. That's the singularity stuff, right? And if that happens, I mean, there's no need to worry about predictive value. We'll have as much understanding of what a singularity style AGI is going to look like as ants have about blockchains, right? Like it'll be completely impossible for us to comprehend. So it's interesting. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it'll not happen. It's very controversial, but I put it aside because it's impractical for us to worry about it. What is very practical to worry about, consider, look for opportunities, is narrow AI is going to get very good. And one of the things that was in the presentation, and it's exactly true, AI is always the next thing that computers can't do. So once computers start doing it, then people are like, oh, well, that's not AI. Of course computers can do that, but it's ridiculous. People used to think that chess was unsolvable by computers, right? Like you couldn't expect a computer to play chess, and now it's taken for granted that you can download on your phone a chess program that runs on your phone and can easily beat a grandmaster in chess. Well, this type of narrow AI, whether it's called chess, whether it's called image recognition, whether it's called answering questions about the MSc blockchain program of the University of Nicosia, whether it's called driving a car, whether it's called guiding a drone, whether it's called flipping a burger. Narrow AI is going to be everywhere in the 2020s. And narrow AI, as it goes everywhere in the 2020s, will absolutely cause a shakeup of white-collar work the same way that offshore manufacturing and automation caused a shakeup of blue-collar work in the 80s and 90s. I don't want to take a position if jobs will be gained or lost. This always happens with every technological shift, and then some people say, oh my God, everyone's going to lose their job, and then someone else says, well, everyone always says that, but what turns out is you have more jobs in the end in the new fields you don't know about. Who knows? It's a theoretical discussion every time. So, and then, of course, the first guy said, well, I know that's always happened before, but this time's different. Who knows, let's say. Let's park that question. What is for sure going to be the case is you will have an era of very rapid change in society, business structure, careers, professions, what parts of what fields are going to be done by computers, what parts of what fields are going to be done by humans. And one of the interesting questions about the fourth industrial revolution is the multiplicative effect of all these technologies together. So, narrow AI is very interesting. Probably the single biggest, as much as I like blockchains, I think narrow AI will be probably the single biggest, most disruptive piece of the 2020s. Bucket one. Internet of Things, data, sensors, etc. Also individually interesting. But more interesting if there are AIs to do something with the data. Bucket two. Bucket three. It's really a subset of AI, but of narrow AI, plus also some materials innovation. Mobility, drones, robots, self-driving cars. You could argue it's a subset of AI, but it's a big enough topic you could bring it out as its own, because so far computers have been immobile. They're stuck in the data center or in your room or on your laptop. Well, the AI that's going to help them move and do visual recognition and give them autonomy is going to allow them to move in the world, and that opens up new possibilities that didn't exist before. And so you can call that drones or self-driving cars or what have you. The fourth bucket. Someone mentioned this here. I think it's right. I think it's a supportive technology. 5G in and of itself is not, I think, one of the it's not the technology itself, but it's a supportive technology. It's going to allow a lot of the stuff to work because you will have much better, faster, less latent uh, data transfer. VR and AR, right, where you'll be able to spin up semi-virtual worlds based on all these things, and then underlying the economics of all this, blockchains. So when you put all of these things together, you say each one of these things is progressing very rapidly, and will progress very rapidly over a decade. And then you take each one of these things and multiply it by the other ones of these things. You can imagine that 2030 will look very, very different than 2020. And I think this is the major takeaway of the fourth industrial revolution, that all of this stuff is going to be a very, very big deal, particularly in combination, whether or not we have runaway artificial general intelligence. Right? Like, all these things will happen even if you just have improved, and improved within logical parameters, narrow artificial intelligence. So with that, I have a handful of questions, but I wanted to get, this is a complicated enough topic that I wanted to get this piece out, and then we'll answer some of the questions, one of which I sort of did answer already. What started as transferring information through the internet has now become transferring money value peer-to-peer, and will become transferring more value, unique ownership, etc., enforced by blockchain, AI, IoT, etc. Why wasn't 5G mentioned in the sheets? Speed would be crucial to make things happen. I agree completely. That's a very good question. It is, I think, even more horizontal than other technologies. It's going to help all of these things work. It probably should get an explicit mention. So I agree about 5G. Trust in AI and blockchains. Trust is maintained by decentralized verification of transactions. For Bitcoin, that is a combination of code and encrypted identity. A bad player, valid encrypted entity, may propose a transaction, but each transaction is verified against the code to ensure only trusted transactions are recognized. This is correct. How does verification against code work in the future for more complex scenarios? How does false data, innocent or deliberate, get weeded out? Without the verification against rules, won't there be limited trust in AI? Right, that's a great question. One of the questions is, what effectively this question is, once you get data on the blockchain that is not native data to the blockchain, now what's the temperature in Nicosia? There is no 100% perfect solution, but I think you will have a democracy-oriented, voting-oriented, weighting voting-oriented solution. So let's give an example. Let's say we have 20 sensors on a street in New York that are supposed to tell us what the temperature is, and that temperature feeds into a whole variety of smart contracts. Well, that temperature, those sensors will probably develop over time some type of reputation score based on how often their results were within whatever X% of the other sensors. And some sensors might have some type of further backing. Maybe one of them is backed by the Weather Channel, and it's put its reputation or its money or some type of staking behind it, and that gives it an extra weight, that it's not a bad actor, it's not deliberately putting fraudulent data. And then if I was writing a contract to execute based on that sensor data, you might take the data from 20 sensors, you might throw away the two extreme values at the end, you might then weight the data based on people's reputation score, you might see what type of standard deviation there is in the data, what the distribution looks like, and then if all of that is within some type of acceptable parameter, you say, fine, we're going to accept based on this that it is 21.3 degrees Celsius right now in the street. If a sufficient number of those conditions are not met, then we say, okay, something's going wrong, query the sensors again, And if you still can't get to some type of consensus, you say, we can't execute. We don't have a serious enough data input to execute. Now, you might be listening to that and say, God, that sounds hard. That's a lot of work. We have a long way to get there. And I think we do have a long way to get there, but I don't think anything that I just described, anything that I just described, is technically impossible today. I think it is all technically possible today. So it's just a matter of getting built, which is what we'll be doing the next 10 years. Okay, next question. Could we have plurality before or instead of singularity? I.e., maybe not everything will converge into one. Yeah, so I think I would phrase it a different way. I think we will have an ecosystem of narrow AIs doing a whole bunch of different things. And that's pretty much guaranteed to happen. That might be what someone might call plurality. What I think of as singularity is not that every single thing is going to absorb into one thing as a black hole of some type. What singularity refers to is more an issue of visibility and forecasting. And what do I mean by that? Let's say you have some type of general intelligence, so it can do anything, like you're doing anything, and somehow it gets better every week. It upgrades its hardware, it upgrades its software. It is good enough as a general intelligence to improve itself as a general intelligence, which is a non-trivial thing to do, right? Like, it's perfectly plausible today to make a sensor that reads license plates. It's very hard to make a sensor that reads license plates and also thinks to itself, I would like to learn how to make an excellent tomato soup, and I'm going to go read some cookbooks and learn what a stove is and make a tomato soup, right? So the gap between narrow artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence is a very big gap. So the singularity assumes you have artificial general intelligence, kind of assumes it out of thin air, that's the hard part, and says, once you have it, it's going to get better. If it gets better, it will make itself better. As it makes itself better, it is going to make it easier for itself to make itself better. And you have, as everyone has learned now with COVID, an exponential curve. And what happens with exponential curves? They go up very quickly. And if you assume this exponential curve begins, there's actually no obvious place where it stops. And so at some point you have this breakaway point where it gets, like, there's no model, I think an AGI, a self-improving AGI, is kind of as smart as us for any extended period of time. It will either not get as smart as us at all, ever, or if it's self-improving, gets as smart as us, it's going to be as smart as us only for a small period of time before it says, bye-bye, guys, and becomes a lot smarter because, again, computers can get more processing power, more data, and better software much faster than humans can evolve. And pretty soon, it just accelerates into superintelligence. And by the logic that it is very hard for a relative dummy to understand how a relative superintelligent thinks, just like it is almost certainly very hard for an ant to have a coherent view on Shakespeare or universal basic income or AI. Whatever things this artificial general superintelligence is going to be thinking post-singularity are just going to be inconceivable to us. Like, we will not have the brain power to conceive them. So it's more an issue of the AGI, ASI versus us as opposed to there will only be one AGI. You could imagine two AGIs, for example, gaining this capability at the same time, and then they're both very smart and can understand each other, but we can't understand them. Right? So that's how I see the plurality singularity point. Related questions. Do you see the combination of AI, IoT leading to less work for humans, and what would that mean for universal basic income? Yeah, well, this is the sci-fi. I don't mean this negatively, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. The sci-fi communist dream that AI will not lead, there's some people who worry about AI. It's going to lead to some totalitarian future where the AI tells us what to do, and we will be kind of slaves to the machine. And there's other people that say, no, we're going to be like gods. We're going to have AI, and it's going to do a whole bunch of things for us, and those things will not require incremental human labor. And here we're talking about narrow AI, not singularity type AI. And so we will have great material wealth that we can spread out to everyone. And some way to do that is to redistribute that through a UBI, a universal basic income. And that's potentially correct. I don't know that it's going to happen, right? You have preconditions for that happening. The preconditions for that happening are that all of the very successful narrow AGI happens. One precondition. Second, in your legal, regulatory, political system, because if those narrow AGI happens, they're going to generate a lot of wealth. And then you need a political system that says how we're going to allocate this wealth. We can't just have, 20 people being trillionaires and everyone else doesn't have anything to eat because the robots took all their jobs. And I'm not sure that's how it's going to look like, but let's say it looks like that. And then people will then say, well, the way to handle that is we'll tax the rich people and give everyone a basic income. And so we are going to spread the benefits from this technology to everyone. So nobody worries about putting a roof over their head, and then they can pursue their interests. You can see a pathway to getting there. It depends on technology playing out in some ways, but it's not really a technological question. It's a social policy question. It's a human question. There's very difficult political science and sociological and psychological questions, because even if you have a universal basic income, which I can very easily imagine people having, people tend to still like to compete for relative position. The average person today is vastly wealthier than the average person 100 years ago. And despite that, the average person today is not thinking to themselves, wow, I am like 100 times richer than my forefathers. There is absolutely no need to go to work today. We can just hang out. Because, yes, it's true, you have like central heating and air conditioning and a TV and an iPad, but you want more things. You want a bigger house. You want a swimming pool. You want the nicer car. And so that part of the human condition does not change, I believe. And so you might have a UBI in the way that we have many other social supports that we didn't have 100 years ago. But I'm not sure it fundamentally changes human society, and then people don't want to work and compete, or compete for status, or compete for relative positioning, because people seem to have that in them in any case. All right, we have a question of, should developing countries use existing exchange or prioritize the creation of their own exchanges? Who knows? It says exchanges can be very profitable, and it's true, they can be very profitable, but they also have very high regulatory and risk burden to be done correctly. So in order to do an exchange correctly, you need to do it correctly, otherwise they have a high risk of the money being stolen or being stolen, and it just ends up being a disaster for everyone. So I don't think they're a cure-all, having an exchange. Next question. Do you think cryptocurrencies, cryptoassets will succeed in the developing world, given most regimes are autocratic, and if not, they're corrupt and will not relinquish control? Doesn't really have to do with this topic, but okay. I mean, sure. There's plenty of semi-questionable behavior in the developed world as well. There is, of course, a spectrum. But I agree that if one's leader in a country is autocratic and corrupt, the incentive for having a transparent blockchain-based system is low, and they won't do it. Like, it is possible to be transparent and non-corrupt without blockchains. And so if the person in charge has not decided to do that without blockchains, it's unlikely that the existence of blockchains will make them rethink their bad governance ways and say to themselves, oh, gosh, that's a real shame. I was previously going to steal all the country's wealth and send it to Switzerland, but now that you guys have invented DLT, I will not do that, and I'll implement the DLT. So I think that's right. I think that people aren't going to implement it just because it exists. And then the other question is the biggest advantage to use it for P2P lending or money transfers? Do you see other advantages? No, I see other advantages. I think there might be a lot of non-financial uses, not just in developing nations, but in developed nations. And these are things we've discussed over the whole course. Okay, so we've gotten through the pre-existing questions, and we're kind of out of time. So I want to thank you all for joining. I want to thank you all, particularly the ones who are here for this session, in making it all the way to the end, and being here even on the last session. I very much appreciate you being part of the course. I very much appreciate your questions. And I hope we see some of you in the MSc. I hope we see some of you in our professional certificate courses. I hope we see some of you at Decentralized. And if not, please stay in touch anyway. We're always happy to hear from you. We have people that have founded decentralized chapters. If you have joined decentralized chapters, again, if you're interested in that, please get in touch with Dimitris and he'll direct you to the right place. And for those celebrating the next few weeks, have a great holiday. Stay safe, stay inside, and that's been a pleasure having you.